Why do we sense that the hill is 20 to 25% steeper when I'm standing by myself, and then if Shawn, you stand next to me and we look at the same hill, it's not as steep? Why? What's going on in the brain?
So the scientific thing, what they were doing originally was they were looking at pain. So if somebody got injured or somebody who is elderly had a fall, they found that the hallway in front of them looks longer that they have to walk down. So pain was actually changing the physical dimensions within our world. Fatigue does the same thing. What happens is our brains become extraordinarily fatigued when we feel like we have the burden of creating happiness and change the world only on our shoulders. It's only when we connect to other people that our brain starts to feel like we have the resources necessary to accomplish this. We stop just thinking about, how do I get over that hill, but how am I going to help somebody else get over that hill? When that occurs, your brain actually releases more resources necessary to help them. The other extraordinary thing embedded within this is what we're finding out of big data, which literally transforms everything I've been taught for the past 4 decades, which is this idea that that you have your own creativity score, happiness score, and energy and intelligence and creativity. But it turns out all of these things that we thought were individual traits are connected ones. So for example, they did a study on heart disease, and they found that heart disease up in Framingham, Massachusetts followed the exact same patterns as a flu outbreak, which it shouldn't. There's no virus, right? So no one washes their hands because they don't want to have a heart attack. But it turns out that the choices we were making, the decisions, were communicable. They were transferring to other people. And it wasn't just that. They went back to the data and they found if you have a close friend, if both of you consider each other to be a close friend, and they go through a divorce, your likelihood of divorce over the next 5 years rises by 30%. If you have a sibling who becomes obese, over the next 2 years, your likelihood of becoming obese doubles. So what we're finding is that things like obesity and divorce, but also altruism. They found that if you give $1 with a group of 19 strangers, when they scatter to a group of 20 other strangers, where each person's in a different group, everyone who was in your first group after you gave the $1 gives a quarter more on average. When they scatter again, they give a nickel more on average, 2 degrees separate from you. These are people you never met. Why I love this is because all through history, we've been hearing our leaders, our religious leaders and philosophers saying, that if you do something kind, it's going to have a ripple effect. And now we can actually see it and quantify it to say, yes, people 2 to 3 degrees separate from you that you never meet will actually become more altruistic because of the choices you're making, because we're so connected. And once we realize we're connected, that's where the power lies.
Wow. Okay. This is crazy because this really puts a whole new level of intentionality on us as leaders, human beings, parents. I mean, this could go forever. Let's go into just for a moment. We've got people listening in here who are very, very intentional and ambitious. They're leaders, personal growth junkies. Blah 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 blah. What you just said puts unbelievable pressure on us, good pressure, to make sure we're hanging around the right people, because that data about heart disease. What you're saying is they were all eating the same way, drinking the same way, whatever else doing the same way. They just kind of all mirrored each other, and that's why the heart disease was essentially spreading. This is really true of negativity in the workplace, just negativity about, hey, I don't feel like I'm getting my shot in life, everybody's overlooking me, all the stuff that is the antithesis of true happiness and purposeful living. Shawn, I mean, what do we take away from this as it relates to people in our life that are pulling us down?
Yeah, so I think it is 2 things. One, we know from this research that you can pick up on negativity and stress like secondhand smoke.
Wow.
So if you're surrounded by it, you have a chance of picking up on some of those negative impacts, which is why it's so important to listen to podcasts that lift us up, listen to news that have solutions, not just problems, listen to people that edify you, surrounding yourself with positive people. You were talking about I created these 5 pathways or these umbrella ideas that we see people who achieve their big potential, they seem to follow these different ideas. And I start the practical section with surround, which is the idea of we have to surround ourselves with positive people because it makes that choice for us so much easier. It's easier for you to choose happiness if the people around you are being positive. But the other side of it is that we don't have to lift our own happiness just by ourselves. So I think one of the most important things that I learned out of writing this book and going on this journey to understand happiness is, I went through a period of depression myself while I was at Harvard. I spent 12 years there. 8 of them, I was counseling the freshman students, helping them transfer from high school to college and try to feel valued in that place. These are kids with high potential that 80% of them go through depression. And while I was doing this, I went through 2 years of depression myself. And up until that point, I had been so good at checking off individual metrics in my life. I was good at my work. I was good at getting good grades. And so when I got depressed, I thought, I can think my way out of this, and I don't need anyone else's help, and I can overcome this all by myself. I don't want to pull people down. And the more I did that, the deeper I got into the depression, until at one point, the turning point for me, which has been a turning point in this research, is I had to reach out to my 8 closest friends and family and tell them, over the past 2 years, I've been depressed. I don't know how to get out of it. I really need your help. And the response was amazing. Not only was there this groundswell of positive response where they're emailing me and calling me and meeting up with me and bringing me cupcakes. I'm not sure how the cupcakes help, but they do. But the more important thing was, it wasn't me trying to raise up my levels of happiness alone. That's small potential. And it wasn't just having somebody help me out of that. That's still small potential. Big potential occurred when I stopped trying to be perfect with other people. And as soon as I told them something I was going through, that vulnerability allowed them to open up about things that they were experiencing: loneliness, depression, questioning their faith, or feeling homesick. And in the midst of this, what got me up each morning was that it was a mutual friendship. We were both helping each other. Part of the reason that I felt meaning in my life when I was depressed was because I could be a good friend to those people who are also being a good friend back to me. So what we're trying to do is to look at the people that surround you. Jim Rohn said that you're an average of the 5 people you spend the most time
That's
with.
right.
We've been finding between 5 to 8 is that in the big data research. We've been finding that the people you spend the most time with, you pick up on those traits. If you put your kids at a school and the kids around them are disobedient, or what they called lazy in the study, or they didn't follow the rules, our kids picked that up, and we immediately got terrified of negative peer pressure. But that same study that was done in the 80s, they actually found that if you put your kids and surround them with people that are compassionate and creative, your kid picks those up as well. So there can be positive peer pressure. And so surrounding ourselves with positive people gives us the groundwork so that when we then need to deal with people that are negative, we can be there for them, much like a doctor doesn't wash their hands and then stay away from sick people. They wash their hands, they get the shots and vaccines they need to, they learn everything they can about how to help people. Then they surround themselves with people that are sick that need them.
Well, I'm glad you took us into the first of the 5 seeds, the strategies, as you refer to them in the book, the second part of big potential and how we lift the ceiling. So let's go to the second one, because I think this is so relevant to our leadership and business audience. E is for expand. The way you write it is expand your power by leading from any seat and inspiring others to do the same. This is huge, Shawn, because you got a lot of young leaders listening in, leaders who aren't necessarily as high up the ladder as they'd like to be. And as human beings, this, we're all guilty of obsessing about the next and missing what we've got to do in the now. And I think that's what you're talking about here. How do we expand our power?
Yeah, so I think the most exciting part of the book is these practical takeaways, because like you were describing, I'm one of these junkies for reading all of this research on how to change your life. And so the concept behind big potential literally does change the way that we pursue happiness, success, in some really important ways. So one of them is that, I thought one of the best ways to expand power and to enhance the people around us was to praise and recognize people around us, to lift them up. And I found actually that what I was doing while I was praising and recognizing them was actually just comparing them. So I would see it with my son. I'd be like, "You were the fastest kid out there," or "Wow, you worked so much harder on that project than anyone else did," or you were the best speaker, pastor that I've heard in the past 10 years, whatever it is. I found that I would get a compliment sometimes from people, and they would say, "You were the best speaker we had today," which at first I loved, because I wanted and needed that. But then after a while, I started not liking it as much, because sometimes other speakers were next to me, but also I wasn't always going to be the best speaker. So now that comparison unbalanced me, right? Because now it wasn't just your comedic timing is good, or I love the research you have. It's that you're better than other people. And while we try to lift up one, we actually diminish the other. So what we've been doing in this research is try to eliminate comparison praise. We stop comparing people when we're getting that praise. We praise the actual traits that they have. That enhances them. And then once you've enhanced them, what you're going to try to do is expand power back out to them, allow them to have control over making some of these positive changes within their life. For example, when I was depressed, instead of trying to control that power and do it myself, I expanded power to the people around me, allowing them to be a friend to me, but also deepening that social connection. And in positive psychology, social connection is the breadth, the depth, and the meaning in your social relationships. And we find a social connection is the greatest predictor of your long-term happiness. The social connection is as predictive of how long you end up living as obesity, high blood pressure, or smoking, which is incredible. But the other side of it is that when we get stressed, as these leaders are trying to build up their careers and help other people, when we get stressed, oftentimes we do the worst thing possible, which is we divorce ourselves from the people around us who are the greatest predictor of our happiness and success. We try to do things all on our own, or we don't feel like we have time for other people. There's a study that just came out at Harvard Business Review where they found that if somebody's feeling very stressed, like they have too much to do, they actually found, and it's counterintuitive, they found that if that person did something kind for somebody else, they wrote a 2-minute positive email praising or thanking somebody else, or brought donuts in, or did something kind to the people around them, they feel like they're too busy. But as soon as they do something for somebody else, their brain says, well, I must have had resources necessary to do that. And their stress levels drop dramatically. So we just did this out in Flint, Michigan. We were working with the teachers there. And part of what we wanted to do is expand power back out to the teachers, because oftentimes they feel so victimized in a society where they don't have all the resources necessary to be able to teach these kids. And so instead of just going there and teaching them gratitude and things that we did do. But in addition to that, on February 13th, February 12th, we went out and we did 1,200 random acts of kindness within Flint, Michigan, where we got the teachers, the janitors, the librarians, the superintendents to go out at 3:30 in the morning and bring donuts to the road construction crew and coffee. They went out to hospices. They went out to the hospitals. They went out to the community centers doing random acts of kindness for all the other people in the community. And what's amazing is these teachers, are doing so much already, but when they felt victimized, they felt like they had no power. As soon as you expanded power back out to them to do something kind for someone else, they returned with higher levels of energy. They felt resilient. They felt like that they had helped somebody else so that their behavior mattered. But now the entire community feels like they want to help them again. And so now what you've got is not individual lights shining. You've got an entire community shining brighter together.